Death, taxes, and another West Virginia coaching search. Another West Virginia coaching search for Wren Baker. So back at it here on WVU Sports Now. Another episode of Mountaineer Report, as we are going to once again talk about the future of the West Virginia men's basketball program and another coaching search. So we reacted to Darren DeVries' departure on our last show, and now we have a Wren Baker press conference to discuss. Mike Asti here. Again, you can find this show everywhere you get your podcasts, and also find us here on YouTube for the video version and all over social media, and hit up WVSN for all of our coverage throughout this coaching search. Again, I'm Mike Asti, and I am joined as always by Cody Nespor. So, Cody, we were both there at the Wren Baker press conference. We talked about maybe he wouldn't do one because we do feel this is going to be quicker than normal searches, but he then did do a press conference. He gives us as much as really any AD gives anyone. I do feel. I always give him credit for that. And, you know, he walked the line of probably not giving his full 100% emotions. I kind of feel like he's maybe more pissed than he will admit. But he talked about DeVries' departure. He talked about the job. He talked about what he thinks of the job. He talked about, you know, a little bit of Bob Huggins and some other candidates. He, of course, declined to really go into detail. So as we fully are going to unpack what Wren Baker discussed, what's your initial takeaway from what Wren Baker had to say? Did anything jump out at you? Any surprises there? Did he go into more detail on anything than you thought? Because sometimes he does offer a little bit more than maybe most ADs again would. Or was it kind of a ho-hum Wren Baker's press conference before coaching search? He now goes dark and we try to do some journalism.
Yeah, you know, I think it bears repeating that Wren's really good at this part of the job, and we keep saying that, and we say that very often, but he is, right? I thought it was a really good press conference. You know, he is very open about whatever we ask him. Like there's some stuff he doesn't want to comment on, but
generally,
by and large, he gives us the whole story. You know, as far as we ask it. You know, I think the thing that jumped out to me is I think this is going to be a really quick search. Kind of two things he said. One, he said they might not even bother with a search firm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Every other search today, including when he was hired, had a search firm for West Virginia. 100%.
That just to me, and then the second thing he said, it was a joke. He said, you know, if all of the candidates we were interested in lose in the next couple of days, and they're in the tournament, we would wrap this up in record time.
Yeah,
those two things to me signal like he's got 2 or 3 guys he knows he's going to interview and that are his top choices, and he's just going to interview them and hire one of them, right? Like, you know, when he was talking about the search firm, he said basically like we know what our plan A, B, and C is. If we hire a search firm, that would just be to work on, you know, D, E, and F. I think he specifically said the contingency plans.
Yeah, because obviously you don't always get who maybe your number one target is. And Will Wade is now going to North Carolina State, so we don't know if that was Wren Baker's necessary number one target. It's what a lot of people are talking about that could make sense, but it'd be, you know, I'm sure Wren also is well aware of the market, well aware of the jobs. Yeah. He has all the spreadsheets. He did talk to a lot of these coaches last year, which he brought up, and he's going to watch, rinse, and repeat, and maybe talk to a few others. But like for the football search, there was upwards of 100 candidates that eventually were talked to. It got whittled down to multiple rounds. There was a final 3, like all of that. He talked to Rich Rod even a minute. He talked to him, I think, 4 times, even a couple times before he actually played in that championship game when he made the joke that, oh, I don't have anything scheduled, because he already had talked to West Virginia a couple of times by that point. This, I don't feel like is going to be like that. I think a candidate, whoever he hires, maybe 1, maybe 2 conversations. He's going to respect them in the tournament. I would not imagine whoever gets the job is going to need 4 or 5 convos over Zoom or in person with Wren Baker.
Yeah. And like, you know, if we just do like a little just hypothetical, like let's say his 3 guys are McCollum, Calhoun, and like Nico Medved.
Sure.
He already vetted those guys last year.
100%.
Right? 100%. So like if hypothetically those are his 3 or 3, you know, similar to those guys, like
it's fair that one of them's in the group, I would imagine, if not all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Like all he would really need to do is like today, like reach out to their agent, like feel out their agent, say, hey, as soon as they lose, I want to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
And then like, the tournament starts tomorrow. If any of these guys lose, or, if guys lose tomorrow, they could come off the court, do their post-game presser, get on the bus and get on the phone with Wren.
Hell,
Right?
DeVries did the Indiana presser 24 hours after he got snubbed. So, yes, this
Yeah.
can move very, very fast. And we
So-
did talk about whether that would have been a difference if they made the tournament or not with Wren. But, yeah, this can move very, very fast. And Wren is that type of guy that he's not going to disrespect the team that you're with. He also seems like a type of guy that if you're a coach of a team in the tournament and he would text your agent right now or communicate with your agent right now and say, hey, whenever you're out, or, good luck to you, but whenever you're out, I'd like to talk with you. And that head coach or that agent would say to Wren Baker, no, he'll talk right now, even knowing the game's tomorrow. It almost sounds like Wren's the type of guy, we've known him long enough, that in the back of his mind, he would store that and say, okay, that's kind of a hit on that guy. Like, I don't like somebody who's going to disrespect a team right before a game and talk with me about another job. Do it after the game. He definitely comes across like someone he would prefer that answer. I got to coach this team first.
Yeah. And obviously, Will Wade has done that. He's
sure
come to an agreement with NC State, and he plays tomorrow, right? His team plays tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't think that, unless we're talking about, maybe the guy Wren once makes like a Sweet 16 Elite 8 run, maybe then there's enough time in between where you could have a conversation with him and kind of work out a framework for a contract and stuff.
I guess I'll ask that. Do you think, because Wren talked about he wants to be quick but not in a hurry, people did bring up, obviously, the transfer portal window, already one player in, obviously talking to DeVries, you can cross off the list. He's going to Indiana, of course. They have to bring new players in. They maybe want to retain a couple of them. They could, but maybe that's not a concern. Obviously, Wren's not going to hire a bad coach who he doesn't want, who is not a fit, just to keep a couple role players. But in all seriousness, if a team goes to beyond the Sweet 16 and you get an Elite 8 Final Four national championship game, you could argue on if that's too deep of a run, and Wren may have to say, I can't keep waiting for this guy. That was part of the Inokoiniki issue, that he wasn't about to wait until what would have been the end of January. Again, he likes Rich Rod, but that kind of really hurt AK when it appears, from what a lot of us know, that really was his final two guys. Do you think that plays a factor here, especially if he has, we talked about in the last show that unlike the football search, unlike the past basketball search where DeVries was well above everybody else and then Dusty May above DeVries in perception, these guys are so close that if, say, he likes McCollum and he doesn't go to Iowa, but somehow they go on a run, or vice versa, or Calhoun does it, do you think Wren just says, I'm not waiting, the other guy's similar?
Well, I think there could be a scenario where, let's say Utah State loses in the first round, so Wren talks to Jared Calhoun first, and then let's say Drake goes on a run. Well, if Wren says, hey, I really liked Calhoun, like I would be comfortable hiring him.
Right.
I see a scenario where it's like, I don't need to wait for Ben McCollum because I'm very comfortable making this hire. And there's also a scenario where he interviews the guys that lose and he doesn't, feel 100% comfortable with any of them. Yeah. So he does wait for a guy making a run. I could see both scenarios. I just, from what Wren said today, I just get the feeling that he has a very firm handle on who he already likes. Like, there's no real exploratory period in this search. Like, I imagine he's already more or less talked to the agents he wants to talk to already and gotten a feel for the guys he wants to get a feel for.
Yeah, Cody Nespor, Mike Asti here. Feel free to chat along. We're obviously live here after the Wren Baker press conference ahead of March Madness and the NCAA tournament. So you may be watching and listening to this and say, hey, I already, that guy's already lost, or already know that result of that, or we already know what's going on. Obviously, we're in front of all of that. So listen with that in mind. Our coverage is at WV Sports Now. And outside of Will Wade, who you basically can cross off before the official announcement, that reporting's done. There are a few candidates who are on the board that look like they make a lot more sense and probably are in that final group, the ones we're mentioning. There are others that could be named. I'm not saying he's only going to talk to 3 guys, but again, I don't think he's going to talk to 150 guys. I don't think this is going to be like where the football search, even the men's basketball search, you immediately need to just, he literally would say, I got to cast a wide net and then kind of whittle it down. I don't think he's casting the wide net. I think he did that last year, less than a year ago. And he might even now just send a quick text, hey, we're still interested. Clearly the job's open again. Maybe these guys know they were a runner-up, they were third, something like that, and he's just going to dip back in. But another interesting thing that he did say that I think this is interesting to fans and always is discussed in a West Virginia coaching search, but admittedly, it is more relevant now because a guy who was a full outsider left after 1 year when it appeared that West Virginia hit a home run with DeVries. He leaves after 1 year, and a year that should have been a tournament, but they get snubbed. But he leaves after 1 year. And Wren Baker was asked again, if because of this scenario, are you now changing your criteria at all? Wren Baker is an outsider. He had no ties. Outside of Rich Rod, none of his coaches have had ties. But now you get a coach who leaves after 1 year without ties. Does this now go into a territory where maybe you want ties? We're trying to hint, obviously, Calhoun, even a Darius Nichols, those type of coaches, they might not have the best resume. Ben McCollum certainly has done more in his life of basketball than a Darius Nichols. Certainly you could even argue with Calhoun, but do you just want a guy who is locked in because of the ties? And to Wren's credit, Cody, it's, that's one of those, he's ready for what we're going to ask in many respects. He certainly appeared ready for that one. And he gave the answer of, because of this one situation, I'm not going to, totally revamp my mentality. Ties are great. If the right guy fits and he has ties, like say Rich Rod, then obviously I'm going to do that. This is all paraphrasing, but if I like a coach and he likes me and we agree and he doesn't have ties, but somebody else has ties who I don't like as much, I'm not going to just bring in the ties guy.
Yeah.
What is your reaction to that answer from him? Did you expect him to stick to his guns so much? And also, do you think the program for this particular big time job, which is much bigger than volleyball or women's basketball, even baseball, that maybe they now should connect to ties and like it a little bit more? Because we both agree that more than even trying to make a tournament next year, the number one goal, you cannot be doing a search again.
Yeah, so, something Wren said, he said Darren had turned down every, job inquiry
right
before Indiana, which,
right,
includes Iowa. We know it includes Iowa.
So again, just to clarify that anyone who, by the way, so they talked in February initially about a contract extension.
Yeah.
Indiana and DeVries, Wren wouldn't do this, but Indiana and DeVries have both pretty much confirmed that they were talking, sooner than even Kazaza, myself, Keenan Cummings, any people we talk about break news, sooner than that. They clearly were talking. It does lead you to believe as a conspiracy theorist that maybe it was in the Bahamas. So maybe the Indiana Burners got that one. But all the reports about Iowa for all of these months, totally wrong. Never going to be Iowa. So anyone who broke news 2 weeks ago and said he agreed with Iowa, making it up, getting wrong information, totally wrong. That clearly is the case from what everybody, Indiana DeVries, Wren Baker, what we're getting, what national media reported, what others locally, like that clearly is the case. And DeVries turned down Iowa, whoever else may have offered. And you don't want to hear this now, but that's a little bit of a feather in West Virginia's cap. I wrote about this. I tweeted about this. I do think as much as it sucks to do a search again, and it's not good perception-wise, it does feel like DeVries would not have left for just any job. It does feel like that he did like the job. It is a good job. The brand is good. You can build on, and you can quickly turn things around in just 1 year. But Indiana's a job he couldn't refuse. And I do think he handled it very, very dirty. I think the fact that you got quotes in a press release, I think the fact that you're standing there in a press conference before Wren even talks, I think the fact that all moved within a 10-hour period, and the fact that Indiana was able to announce literally minutes after Pete Thamel broke the news and confirmed it, I do think that, Cody, I think that all smells pretty fishy. And even DeVries' comments where, he appreciates Indiana letting him coach his team. Like, what are you doing? You're basically admitting tampering there, Darren. So I do think all of that looks really, really bad. But I don't know if he would have done all that if it was Iowa. He just did all that for Indiana. So that is another takeaway that it looks like a joke and a punchline nationally, but if he gets his guy, I think they still could be fine. And I do not think this means the West Virginia job is some scarlet letter of sports. I just think this is just an inconvenient set of circumstances because of blue blood. Whether they've been more successful or not the last 20 years is a job that Darren DeVries did not want to refuse, and all the money is there. But competitively speaking, even financially, it appears that Wren Baker feels they can compete with the Iowas of the world, if not more. They can compete with the Big 12 teams. They can compete with everybody else who talked to Darren DeVries, just maybe not Indiana. So
yeah,
that's a positive end to take away from this press conference, I do think, for fans.
Yeah, so that's what I was kind of getting to is, like, I mean, Wren, says that it was going to take an Iowa level financial commitment, legacy, stuff like that to get him away. So I think then when you're talking about, does somebody need to be connected to the university or the state? Obviously not, because now we know Darren wasn't going to leave unless and Mike, several months ago, when whatever coach, Arizona coach it was that joked like to give Darren an extension.
Yeah.
When we talked about that, we kind of talked about, why do you give him an extension now? It's in case one of the blue bloods comes calling. Like you and I talked about, like, what if Mark Pope didn't work out, or Davis or something? And I think, we talked about Kentucky and UNC, but Indiana's like that level historically.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And so
it sounds like they were talking then, though. That's around the time Wren is confirming that they talked. Yeah.
Yeah. So that to me says, like, you don't need ties. Like, this is a job that is viewed very, very well. Obviously, a guy who has no background comes in and thought of it that highly that he wasn't going to leave. So, I don't think you have to settle for it. I say settle, but I don't think you have to kill to get a Jared Calhoun because he coached here for 5 years. So that means he'll stay forever. Like that.
Right.
Even Wren said, like, just because a guy has some ties doesn't mean he's not going to leave too. Right.
Yeah. WVU fans know that very, very well. 100%.
And I think that's, so, I think Wren's mission, his goal is and should be, go hire the best coach who you believe you can afford and you believe you can retain for a period of time. And as long as you do that, nothing else really matters.
100%. And just going to the chat here, he's still crapping on Iowa basketball. I try not to. That wasn't the goal here in these shows, nor the coverage of this, but it just happens. It just happens. And I got to say, maybe Ben McCollum will be their guy. It'll be going home for him. And as I said before, if that happens and they move first, I don't think it means the job's better. Clearly, it's not to DeVries. And the money, it shows that it's not, despite the conference they're in. But if that doesn't happen and somehow he ends up at West Virginia, you best believe I'm going to be crapping again all over Iowa, because it's just funny right now. I mean, their fans are going to act like fools and act like trolls, and then why not? But in all seriousness, that's just what ends up happening in this type of situation, because when you're in a coaching search, when you are a coach and you're deciding between jobs and they're all involved, you're going to be comparing them. So that Iowa looks bad still in all this.
Yeah. The pecking order becomes apparent for all to see when you start seeing where coaches do and don't go.
Right.
And the pecking order right now, Iowa is not on par with West Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, clearly. I mean, to Darren DeVries, who is clearly a sexy commodity in terms of the coaching world. Young up-and-coming coach who just basically, in 1 year got a team with a tournament resume, had success at a mid-major, now is at a blue blood, getting a big investment. To him personally, the rank is West Virginia ahead of Iowa, even though he's from there, and then, of course, Indiana ahead of West Virginia. And again, this could be a scenario, Cody, where if Iowa called, he said no, but if Indiana called, he couldn't say no. And again, I think he handled it very, very poorly and very, very dirty. But this could easily be a scenario where if Indiana did not have that job open and no other blue blood call with that kind of investment, that he is still the West Virginia coach. It seems like Wren was certainly interested in that. What are your thoughts on where you think the program stands now after hearing Wren? Because that's always a debate. And of course, they're not rolling in money, but I have to say, Cody, you go into a Wren Baker press conference, generally speaking, with, you're going in off of some negative news. Certainly that's been the way for the last 3 or 4 years. When he speaks, he's usually trying to clean up some mess, either going into a coaching search or some drama. Obviously, there's introductory press conferences. You're in a better mood. But whenever he does a presser, and most ADs don't do pressers every week like coaches, it's usually some national news, usually something went wrong. And obviously the fans then start getting in that doomerism mode, and, coach leaves after 1 year, and it gets really negative. And it's very toxic around the West Virginia fan base right now, as expected. And I totally sympathize with the fans and what's been going on. But when you hear Wren Baker talk, and, an AD is always going to try to have his program look the best it can, because he realizes a possible prospective coach could be watching this presser, is going to see the coverage. They might be on social media. He's not going to sit up there and say, we're broke, everything's screwed, we're effed, everything's so bad. He's not going to do that. But I also do think he's very, very honest. I do think we can kind of read his tells if he's trying to, BS you, whether that's, what he's intentionally doing, or he just feels he has to, or he's giving you the 100% truth. And I think most of the time it is the 100% truth. And he made it very clear. He believes West Virginia can compete not only in the Big 12, which is a top conference, but nationally. He does believe they're in a better situation now in this current financial market with rev share and all of that than maybe they would have been before rev share, when it was just about NIL. He does believe the brand is a solid one. He always throws out that top 25 all-time brand. He does still believe in that. He read the lineage of the 31 appearances in the tournament, the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, the Final Fours, etc. And he talked about what we talked about on the show, that it's not just Huggins like some fans think. There's been success way before Huggins. There was success right before Huggins. There was even now success after Huggins, because DeVries took him to a tournament snub. It's not just coming off the Eilert year. And it almost seems like he kind of agrees with what we said too, that you don't want to do a search again, but the brand of West Virginia basketball has just been proved and made better by DeVries. Not where it was even after Eilert. That was the worst season in program history, but now it looks even better. You can walk in. The facilities are great. There's more of an NIL investment now with Rich Rod there than it even was a year plus ago. And Wren seems very optimistic. He's cautiously optimistic. He's not an idiot. He knows the situation. They might never be Indiana or a blue blood, but he definitely sounds cautiously optimistic. So now, after hearing Wren, what is your perception of the brand of the program, and how much of that from Wren being so optimistic do you think he 100% believes, or he's also trying to do a sales pitch to a coach?
So here's the number one thing that WVU has right now. Like, the number one absolute most important thing is they're getting a $6 million check from Indiana.
That's true. 100%.
And a $6 million really gives Wren the freedom to do whatever he wants. And he kind of talked about it like, he basically said $6 million is enough money to buy out whoever we would want.
Yeah. Well, they made $3 million. You paid DeVries 2.8, and then you end up getting 6. And honestly, Cody, it might even be a little hair over 6, because he talked about with DeVries leaving before April 30th. It didn't give us the exact numbers, but it's actually over 6. So it's upwards of 6. And he mentioned it too. He didn't get the Kellogg buyout. He didn't get the best buyout in the world. It's only 37.5. But when you talk about it being before April 30th, when you look at this era, all the money Indiana's going to pay, they're covering the Drake costs, which otherwise WVU would have had to have paid. This ends up being the highest buyout in men's basketball history. Hard to be too mad about that situation, even though you'd like the contract to have looked better and not a guy leave.
Yeah, so it gives them this freedom where you mentioned the athletic department as a whole isn't rolling in cash, but like this $6 million, and Wren basically said it's all or mostly going to be used for this search.
Right.
It lets them buy out whoever they want. A mid-major buyout is like barely $1 million most times, and it's even like, hey, if there's a high major guy out there who you want, who's maybe not thrilled with his current university, or the current university isn't thrilled with him, hey, you got the cash, you've got the and here's the other thing about this money. It's not like this is $6 million in installments over the next 6 years.
Right.
This is a $6 million check Indiana has to give Wren Baker in 60 days.
100%.
Right. So he gets it right now up front to turn around and use on this coaching search to say, hey, I like this guy. I'll cut you a little check, buy him out of his contract. I'll give him a nice deal. And the other thing is $6 million.
They could watch the college basketball world burn, and he could be like, okay, you stole my coach after a year. F it. I'm doing the same to you, and we're going to go round and round we go. He could play with the bigger boys than people are acting. We could see a total surprise hire. It could happen. He has the money now to do that. Yeah, at least for this.
And the other thing is, like, you don't have to use it all right now. Like, you got $6 million. Hey, let's sign a guy to a 5-year contract. We'll use this $6 million. We'll give him, 500,000 more each year. And that's attractive. I mean, so I think the biggest thing is this search is this money. And then you and I talked about it. Wren mentioned it today. The program is undoubtedly more attractive today than it was this time last year.
Without a doubt.
With no players, the worst season ever. Bob Huggins' cloud still hanging over.
He's still going to games every day, like talking to the media. He calmed down on all of that. They're trying to respect him a little bit more. That drama's gone. That cloud's gone. The vibes are better despite DeVries leaving. Everything in the world is better now than it was a year ago. 100%.
And they just showed that they can win in this portal era. You can build a portal team here at West Virginia. And hey, Darren's roster wasn't even fantastic on paper.
No.
Right?
Especially without Tucker for most of the year. Right.
They didn't go out and spend all this money on a slam dunk portal team. They hodgepodged guys together. And so you can sell, let's use Ben McCollum. You can sell Ben McCollum like, hey, we just did it. Here's all this liquid cash we have. We're gonna give half of it to you.
We can give you a better roster than Darren
Use
had.
the other half to build whatever damn roster you want, and let's go. Let's get this thing started. I think it's an extremely attractive job right now for very 100%. Good reason.
Yeah. And you know what else you can do? And we'll get into this too, and maybe some names, and he wouldn't obviously talk about names, and Justin Frazier is one that was directly asked outside of Huggins, which we'll get to as well. And he's not going to answer that. And obviously he's the one the players want, and he'd likely retain most of the roster. Maybe he'll go with DeVries, Big Ten again, but if he has a head coach spot at WVU, I'm sure he'd rather take that. But you're actually in a situation now, Cody, and obviously Indiana has tons of cash. But if Justin Frazier's never been a head coach before. If you end up with your guy and you pluck somebody, and maybe these assistant coaches, they're tweeting up a storm here. It does not look like, I will admit, haven't talked to them directly, doesn't look like they're fully 100% locked in with the Darren DeVries life. Like Nelson Hernandez was driving around Pittsburgh blasting Mac Miller as the news was going on. Nicky Norton's out there tweeting jokes. We got Chester Frazier talking about how he wishes he could stay. If you look at a lot of his replies, how he loves Morgantown, loved WVU, loves the fans. Those aren't comments and actions of guys that are saying, F UWU, we're all on this screw job Darren DeVries train that people are saying that he put together. So it's possible, Cody, that if, and obviously Indiana has more money, we've seen that. But if Chester Frazier is not going to be the head coach at WVU and he's looking for a top assistant job where he likes and he's going to be treated very well, Wren Baker could say, hey, I know Darren probably is going to call again. Maybe he won't, but we like you. Maybe you're not the head coach right now, but we're going to make you the highest priced assistant coach in the country, recruit your ass off, and stay here. It's not like he's been with DeVries for 20 years. They had a 1-year run. So now you have the money where you can do the Rich Rod thing. You can get a Zach Alley maybe if you're not taking tons of cash. And I do think Wren Baker can put up 2 different scenarios to these coaches, McCollum, Calhoun, whoever. He can say, okay, you can take this salary and do this, or you can take a little bit less than this salary, and then maybe we keep Chester Frazier. Like, that is a possibility now because he has a lot of cards to play with, and Wren Baker can have some fun here in this. It's his jam. He likes coaching searches. It's kind of a hobby of his. He doesn't want to do this again, but he can have some fun here, and I don't think it has to take that long. I think he can present a couple of different plans to his group of 3 or 4 guys, and then pick the best one. They can pick the plan they want, and like the other searches, Cody, I also think this is going to be true. When you're doing a search, and Indiana even talked about this too with DeVries, when you're doing a coaching search, you need to, impress the candidate as much as they need to impress you. Obviously, DeVries wanted that job, but they talked about they wanted to impress him. They wanted him to be bought in to what they're selling. I'm sure Wren feels the same way, and now more than ever because he doesn't want a guy to leave. So he's selling a coach. They're selling him. But I would imagine when you look at the jobs that are open, again, I do feel West Virginia is arguably the best job available right now, certainly with NC State off the board. And I still would argue that maybe even better than North Carolina State, certainly in the last 25 years. Jim Valvano year is really the only argument that they would have. And obviously last year in that run, but they weren't really a tournament team. They just went on a run and then fired a coach and kind of, that ended in weirdness as well. But Wren is probably not going to get too many no's. Like, I'd imagine if he offers any of these guys the job and says, I'm offering you the job, what plan do you want? He's probably not going to have any of these guys we mentioned or any fan wants to mention say, no, I'd rather take this job. It's not the Michigan job hanging out there. This isn't like Louisville, Michigan, all those jobs hanging out there like last year where he had to compete with all these other power jobs. And that's why he even admitted to us, Cody, if you remember, it was a sidebar chat. I think you were in the scrum. He basically admitted that Dusty May and him are close. That's why everyone connected him to the job. But the Dusty and his people basically told Wren, we love you. We do like the job, but Michigan's a better job. We're the top candidate. So that's, we're not going to fall back on you. We're we could date the 10. You're the 9. And Wren understood that. But Wren is right now the 10. So I can't imagine. He legitimately should get his pick of the people. And even if he loses out on a couple guys because they take jobs quicker, I don't think he's going to lose sleep in this search. Like maybe he might have had some sleepless nights while he's searching for Neil Brown's replacement or for that job after Eiler because it was the worst season in program history and the drama. I think he probably is pretty comfortable every night. Okay, DeVries is done. I wish he would have stayed, but the brand's good. The money's now better. We got this buyout. We're going to get a good guy. And I would imagine, Cody, that he's also going to make this buyout something where he's going to make it very clear to them, this is the buyout situation. If you're not willing to do this buyout situation where it pretty much locks you in, where you're going to get totally screwed if you leave after 1 year, then I think he would. I think that's the only scenario where he maybe would say, okay, I could have the top guy. He's upset about the buyout, or I could go maybe I could have McCollum, but he's upset about the buyout, or I could have Calhoun and he's cool with the buyout being strict. I think then he might go to adjust to the stricter buyout. Like I think Wren, it's clear Wren is not going to want to do this again. So I think if you just get that sexy coach and you're not sure if he's going to stay, I don't think Wren, it's almost that fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I think it's clear here he won't admit this, Cody. I think Wren is mad. I think Wren knows that Darren DeVries pulled the wool over him. I think Wren does realize this was dirty. I don't think that maybe he thinks the Tucker thing is a conspiracy, but I think Wren knows that they talked when Darren said he wasn't talking to anybody. I think they were talking, and if not agreed, way back when they maybe were talking about an extension. And I don't think Wren wants to do that again. So I don't think he's going to let somebody fool him again. I really don't. His career's kind of on the line. He even alluded to that in the presser. There's no one else standing, sitting up here with me. I expect the donors and McAfee and Kendrick, but they're not going to get fired from anything if we happen to lose. Eventually, if Rich Rod doesn't hit and men's basketball doesn't get back to promise, Wren could get fired. I mean, you have a new president coming in. They may like each other, but they're not just going to lose because Wren's popular. These are the two jobs he has to hit on and has to win.
Yeah. I think certainly, going back one topic there, the kind of vibe I got on Chester Frazier was he's not really going to be a candidate for head coach, but, reading between the lines, it sounded like Wren's very interested in keeping him on staff.
Yeah.
That's kind of the feel I got. And then, what you're talking about, it kind of goes back to this money, right? This lump sum of money where you can now, and Wren gave us his buyout formula, right? He said he just straight up does half of whatever the contract guarantees. With the cash he has to play with, if you love Ben McCollum, you can get, right? You paid Darren 2.8. You have the cash on hand right now to say, we'll do 3.2, we'll do 3.3, we'll do 3.5. And in that scenario, even if the buyout is still at 37.5%, now all of a sudden, other teams are looking like it's approaching $10 million to buy this guy out.
Right.
Nobody has that. Like Indiana maybe has that. Nobody has that kind of cash.
Yeah, then you're getting into so you'd lose them to Duke and Kentucky would be it almost.
Yeah, so that's where I think if you get the right guy right now, you absolutely can use this money to really make a prohibitive buyout while also giving a really good contract to a coach you believe in, right? Yeah. And the flip side is, well, what if the coach sucks and you give him this big contract? Well,
Sure.
that's the scenario where Wren gets fired.
Well, and he knows that too, and that's why this is an important search, and that's obviously also a
Yeah.
scenario where eventually you got to fire a coach, and that did get him into a little mess with Neil Brown, where the original extension, which he didn't sign, that was Shane Lyons, wasn't great, and then he made it a more comfortable. And I even said at the time, like, you just tinker. I think Neil Brown sunk himself, making it a more program-friendly extension and contract, which he thought and said this makes it easier to have better assistance. This allows us to win. He thought he was helping everything and making it easier when he really hung himself, because he made it easier to get fired, and he eventually was, and they didn't win, and it ended the tenure. But yeah, I don't think Wren is going to get himself in a scenario where he can't fire somebody, or he's going to have somebody that is a bad coach. This is very important. Shannon Miller there. Yeah. And that's another thing too. I see a lot of Wren hate out there now, more than it was even 48 hours ago. What Wren Baker has had to deal with in these several years at WVU, which I'm sure he thought was a dream job of sorts for him, because this is a big deal at his age. It's a big time job, elevating him, and maybe in the future he'll end up at USC or Ohio State. But this is a big job that he has to hit on and have success at, as you're saying, in order to even get that opportunity. If you think Wren's not going to retire at WVU, that's very fair, and I agree, and he probably knows it too. But he's not going to get those promotion jobs in 5 years or whatever unless he gets a success here. They're not going to hire him because they feel bad that he has all these coaching searches. He has his career on the line too. But yeah, this is in no way Wren Baker's fault. I mean, no one's perfect. I know there are some donors that think he doesn't answer the phone enough. I know I've heard things that maybe he's a little shrewd operator with assistant coaches. If they interview, that he kind of lets them know, like, you interview here, I'm not going to be happy, and maybe you won't be able to come back. I've heard rumblings of that, but he's being a shrewd businessman. He's a politician of sorts, and he's a very honest and easy AD to deal with media-wise. He's very open to the fans. He is great with money. He's improved the financial situation exponentially. It's not Indiana, but it's way better than it was when he got there. I think Shane Lyons messed up time and time again, just detailed the Neil Brown contract. And I just cannot imagine a scenario where people are blaming Wren Baker for this. If Wren Baker, honestly, Cody, takes another job, tomorrow, and he won't do it during the search, of course, and I don't think it's happening. But, if he does, it's hard to blame the man. I mean, he's dealt with everything under the sun. So, yeah, I mean, and, I'm glad that at least Shannon Miller there respects the money that Wren Baker's earning, because some of these coaches are going to be earning more than him, and he's doing a hell of a lot of work cleaning up some drama with all the pressure falling on him. Cody Nespor, Mike Asti, Mountaineer Report here. Again, find us everywhere you get your podcasts. Our coverage is at WV Sports Now, and also find us here on YouTube. We talked a lot of coaching candidates. Wren Baker was asked this directly, tip of the cap to Bob Herzl, the longest tenured writer in the whole region, and he did ask it. Bob Huggins, is he a candidate? Is he not a candidate? Wren Baker was asked. He's not going to mention any candidate at all, obviously by name or go into detail, but he did make the comment, we're focused on the future, not the past. You could read into that he was trying to send a message that Bob is not a candidate here. Again, I've said until we get a legit reporting, he's not going on our board. Obviously, Rich Rod came back. I think it's different because that was not dealing with Wren Baker 17 years ago, whereas Bob Huggins did have dealings with Wren Baker, and there was dirtiness there, even though Wren Baker's always going to respect him publicly. What did you make of how Wren Baker handled that question? And do you read into it, as I am, that he is subtly eliminating Bob Huggins from the conversation, or do you think we can get a full-on surprise here and he thinks enough years went by, and if McCollum goes to Iowa and he doesn't like Calhoun, because there are parts of his resume that do make you pause, that Wren Baker's maybe says, okay, Huggins, 2 years, give you a redemption tour. You're not going to get as much money as you made before. You apologize. We kind of do the Rich Rod thing, and we'll try this again. They're going to probably put you in the tournament if we get 19 wins where we didn't get in with DeVries. Where are you on the Huggins after hearing from Wren Baker?
So let's first off, Bob Herzl, the best that there is. When I was listening back to the press conference, Mike, the way he asked that question, he said, obviously, the monkey hanging over the room in all of this is Bob Huggins, which is just a beautiful way to phrase that.
He puts the metaphor as if he's like writing a column in the press conference. Like he asked it that way. No,
phenomenal.
100%. He always drops
No,
from the
I
top
mean-
rope every now and then. Bob Hertzler just chills back. He just hears like myself and Keenan, and we're just firing questions. And then after 10 minutes, Bob just top rope and
Yep.
the elephant hanging from the room here. And yeah, 100%. And it's to Hertzler's credit too, he's the one media member that every coach who walks in the room, even if they don't follow the program, is going to be made aware of him. Probably is aware of him. Is going to be told about him. So he does command the respect that. Not that anyone else, I would have asked it if he didn't. We only got a couple questions each, but him asking it also allows it to be answered the best because Wren's not going to disrespect Bob Hertzler. But yeah, he did ask it and we got an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think Wren, he said everything except no, flat out. Like Huggins isn't coming back, guys. Like he's not. Beeline's not coming back either. Like
no, and that was not asked, but no.
But like
he was closer in the last search though.
Oh, Mike left. But Huggins isn't coming back. I mean, Wren said everything short of just flat out saying no. Hertzler followed up and asked, "Oh, hey, Mike." Yeah. Hertzler.
I'm back.
Hertzler even followed up and like specifically said, like, "Are you saying that as if he's a candidate or not?" And right. Wren's like, "It's very plain to me. Huggins isn't going to be a candidate, and I don't think he's going to even be involved in this." Which, and you're right, Mike, when you say it's different from Rich Rod. Rich Rod, happened 17 or whatever years ago, and then went off and basically had a whole nother career.
And he just was coaching. He just had success as a coach.
Yeah, and
right.
Huggins, this was 2 years ago. He screwed the university over, 100%. Made a fool of himself and Wren and Gordon Gee.
Yep.
And then tried to sue like 2 years ago, and all he's done since then is sit at home and probably watch Gunsmoke.
And complain through him. So his daughter sends smoke signals that he's still mad. Yes, he's done great things with his fish fry, but yeah, there has been there's been no period of atonement here. I mean, Rich Rod went on shows 10 years ago and said he regrets the move, even though people maybe weren't aware of it. Bob Huggins this is very, very fresh for Wren Baker and that program still.
It's just not. I mean, there's just no way it's happening. I mean, and it just isn't. And Beeline, obviously, to a lesser extent, he didn't burn the bridge down, but like,
right.
I just don't
he's
think
too old, man. He's too old.
And the same, another guy I'll mention because I see a lot of older WV fans bring up Jim Crutchfield, who, look, Jim Crutchfield's had an outstanding coaching career, an immaculate resume in Division II. He's not coming. He's 70. He's going to be 70 years old. He's never coached above Division II. I know he's from here. I know he coached at Cameron High School. I know he graduated from WVU. He's not going to be hired. He's too old, and he's never coached above Division II. Like, just expel those options from your mind because it's just not happening. Like, I think I said this during the football search. Don't be afraid to learn new names. Like, there's nothing wrong with somebody whose name you don't know today getting hired tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is fair that if you're Wren Baker and somebody has had their 70th birthday, they're eliminated. I mean, it doesn't have to be drama or how somebody left or where they're coaching or where they're from. If they've had their 70th birthday, all the guys you mentioned are 70 and older. You just want to move on. I think no, he was not asked directly about Beeline, and I will say again. And Kazaz reported on this as well. Beeline was interviewed, discussed. He was involved a year ago. I mean, it's not like I'm not saying he was going to be the guy or anything like that, but Beeline had at the time, obviously Huggins was way too fresh and would totally not have been an option. It was not either. That was even more ludicrous then than it could be now. But Beeline, I do believe from what I heard back then, that Beeline was a consideration from Wren if he could not find a DeVries-like candidate because he was just coming off the Eilert. He couldn't swing and miss again. He didn't want the program to be, down and out. So if he couldn't get DeVries and that type of guy, I think he was considering not a long-term deal, but as
Yeah.
I jokingly said with Huggins, I think he was considering a 1 or 2 year, you come in, save us, and then pass it off to somebody who actually is you 30 years ago when we started your career at that point. I think he would have done that. And then there was tons of reporting from myself and others that Beeline partly messed it up a little bit by wanting more of a commitment from WVU, and then he totally went in another direction. And if that's what Beeline wants at his age, that's ludicrous, my guy. Like, that's just crazy. And if that reporting is wrong, then fine. But I don't think now, a year later, when the brand is better and DeVries just proved he can turn it around very, very quickly, that he's then going to go back into this bridge thing. He might have been desperate then. I don't think Wren feels like he has to do, you come save me now. He has the best job available, and he's going to say, I'm getting my guy. It'll be more of a commitment now. I'll work the contract better now. I'm not going to be fooled again, but I don't have to do a 70-plus-year-old guy for a bridge like maybe he thought a year ago.
Yeah. And if I'm remembering correctly, which I was strictly covering football at this time, but I believe Beeline was kind of in the mix 2 years ago before Eilert was named interim coach.
100%.
I believe there was a little bit of tire kicking, like, hey, do you want to be interim coach for a year? And like you're saying, Mike, again, if I remember everything correctly, I believe Beeline basically said, like, I'll be head coach. I don't.
No. At that point, they were looking for, again, would you be a bridge? At that point, I think they even wanted him to do a 1 year thing. I think what it was, Cody, was they called a Hall of Famer who was with the program who doesn't have a stand because he did leave appropriately and he had a great run after WVU, so there was still proof of him being successful. He wanted to get back into coaching. He had a horrible thing in the NBA where controversial comments were made and players were against him, but that's smoothed over. And I think they called him like, look, we dealt with tons of drama. We can't bring Huggins back. We got 2 Hall of Famers here in the last 30 years. The one is, we're moving on from because of controversy. You don't have that stain right now. You said publicly you want to coach. Help us out for a year or two. But obviously you're too old to be doing this for 5-10 years. You should know that too. And there was ego and there were rumors that his son thought that was insulting to them. And, he's a Hall of Fame coach. Cody, there's an argument, and Huggins is a Hall of Fame legendary coach. He's done it at non-Blue Bloods his whole life. On the court, there's no reason to say he doesn't deserve the Hall of Fame. And they did make the tournament at the end of Huggins. But that last 5 years were not nearly what the first decade was. And Beeline, during that time, was still getting Michigan in the championship game. They were in Final Fours. You could make an argument that Beeline's proved to even be a better coach than Huggins the last 20 years. If you want to, you can argue the two of them. They're both Hall of Fame coaches. And the resume is right there. Total wins for Huggins, but, in terms of March success, more for Beeline. And he did have more money at Michigan, but he also had the Elite Eight run with West Virginia. So he could have had a great 1 year. They could have been a tournament team in 1 year, and then Wren would tap him on the shoulder and say, can you please pass it off to my next guy? I was able to do a search while you were coaching because I had a full year to do this without drama. And it didn't appear that Beeline wanted to do that. And you know what? To his credit, he doesn't owe the program to do that. He left 15 plus years ago. He's a Hall of Famer at Michigan, just the same at West Virginia. He had a great career. If he doesn't want to do a caretaker thing, Cody, I don't think there's anything wrong with him saying respectfully, I'm not a caretaker. I'm a legendary coach. If you only want me as a caretaker, I don't want to do it. Okay. Then that's it. Then you're done. Like that's fine. But I think that conversation that was had a year ago and that was had 2 years ago, I think Wren knows where Beeline is and is basically, it's there. He knows. He doesn't want a caretaker. He wants respected, all of that. Maybe he wants less of a commitment now, but I don't think he needs to have, get the pulse of Beeline anymore. I think he has it.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, like in hindsight, this might sound funny. I think the best thing happened for that first year after Huggins, where you didn't, just let Eilert do it, and we don't care how it goes or what happens. Really, just get through the year and let us do a search. Because I think a worst case scenario is you tie yourself to a John Beeline for too many years. Or Mike, if you remember Andy Kennedy from UAB. There was rumors that he was just going to get hired flat out, and he kind of turned it down. I think in hindsight, the best thing was just let Josh Eilert do that year. Whatever happens, happens. However few wins you get, it's whatever.
Yeah.
And we do the search, and they did the search. They got their guy, and obviously absolute best case scenario is Darren stays here long term. Second best case scenario is you're in a really good spot. And we keep saying it, you're in a really good spot right now in terms of perception of the program, in terms of the finances, in terms of you're going to have your pick of whoever you want. And so I think in hindsight, everything has worked out almost as well as you could hope since Bob Huggins, got that DUI.
In a way, and no, I 100% agree. I mean, not to make it a whole, show on what happened 2 years ago and going to Eilert as an interim. But yeah, I think also the timing, Cody, if that would have happened now in March, I could see an argument against what we're saying because you would have had 2 months to be able to say this is a top 25 job and all of that. You're doing a search in June. It's too late. Teams were put together. The Andy Kennedy thing, if you remember, he literally basically said, I put my team together. If I leave now, I am effing this program. I don't want that stain on me. And Wren kind of alluded to it. I got turned down by some coaches who said they would have ruined their program and their reputation by coming to me in July. I mean, that would have really been dirty. So at that point, you were basically just, okay, we got to do the Eilert thing. I think Eilert, even if you remember his presser, he knew he wasn't going to get that job from day one. Like, he was an interim.
Well,
give me $1.5 million. Like, it'll help my family, and I'll hopefully get another job in the future. Like, I don't think he ever thought he was getting that full-time job either.
Well, they made the interim. They made the word interim in 50-point font in his graphic.
I actually remember right as that presser was about to start, one of my former colleagues at the Tribune Review in Pittsburgh when I was there, and Jerry DePaula, who covers Pitt and is a great reporter there and came down to cover it. And he tapped me on the shoulder. It was almost like a Seinfeld episode with the Pez dispenser. It was so inappropriately timed, where he, like, right as they're about to talk, he tapped me on the shoulder and whispers, "Hey, Mike, could they have had that word interim any bigger?" And then I'm about to crack up laughing as they're about to start. But yeah, I mean, the message was clear. It was subtle to either, like, we're going to pay you, enjoy the money. You're getting to be coached for a year. Maybe you'll be able to impress somebody else in the country. This is likely not your job. And I think they also knew it wasn't going to be a good year, honestly. I mean, they're in core with the NCAA half the year, the whole battle thing. Again, we could talk about that all day. But anything else from the Wren press conference about the search now post DeVries that stands out to you at all? He did mention kind of a timeline. We do think this will be quicker. He was having some fun, but it does also feel like that he's maybe a little bit upset at DeVries. I know I also try to dance around and respectfully ask if he has any regrets or try to allude to what the fans want to know, if he feels like Tucker DeVries wasn't really hurt and if that was a whole conspiracy and all of that. And he, of course, said the medical staff made the decision. He doesn't have the regrets. He's not going to admit a conspiracy, obviously, but DeVries did say that he, appreciates Indiana letting him coach while they were talking to him months ago. There are rumors right around the time he said they first talked to him, Tucker gets hurt. They make the announcement then that Tucker's out for the year right around that time that DeVries kind of alluded to. He talked to Indiana. That is also a similar timeline that Wren corroborated, that him and DeVries talked about an extension. That's why that February first week or two looks really funky for this whole scenario. What, now that we heard from Wren, now that we've heard from DeVries where he kind of stepped in it, now that you get Indiana reporting that clearly makes it out like they've been talking for weeks, if not months, how dirty do you think this was handled? I mean, you're not maybe as much of a conspiracy theorist as I can be, but how dirty do you think this was? Because it's hard for me to buy that there's not some dirtiness here. And Wren knows it.
I certainly don't think this goes back to February or the Bahamas.
Okay.
I think
that's back in November. If you go to the Bahamas, that's November.
When I listened to Darren's presser from this morning, like the way I took what he said was like they had maybe talked to him during the Big 12 tournament or like very recently. Like I didn't take that as saying they talked to him 7 weeks ago and it was a done deal.
Sure, but that's still before Wren goes on Sportsline and basically tells you that the reason coming back. So that does still look like a little dirty. Maybe it's not as bad as the burners are telling you, but that's still a little crappy.
Like I just don't. I don't like. That's just how the business is done, right? Like I'm not gonna.
Oh, sure.
Like that happens to programs every year, so it's hard for me, I think, to sit here and be like, "Oh, boo-hoo, West Virginia, their coach."
No, I'm not saying boo-hoo. I'm just saying how dirty do you think it is? Because you don't have to go to the Bahamas, but Wren is saying, Wren said on Talkline, I believe we can be aggressive. I think we got a commitment. He basically alluded to DeVries coming back. We obviously could debunk the Iowa rumors weeks and months ago, even though people on the internet were trying to bring him up. He then said DeVries turned everybody else down. He said they were talking in February about an extension. He said they continuously, as recent as, this week, we're talking about the future of the program. And then you're even admitting that you think that while Wren and DeVries are talking about the future of the program, DeVries has already talked to Indiana. And that, if you go back, I think at minimum he talked to Indiana about a week ago, which would lead me to believe that Wren got a little egg on his face, if not as much as the internet says.
Well, the only thing I think, and I don't know, I'm not Darren's confidant.
Yeah, we can speculate on the show. I'm asking in a speculatory manner. Yeah.
The only thing I think that is objectionable is, obviously, Darren didn't give Wren a chance to make a counteroffer. And Wren said that very clearly.
That's true.
The only thing, so that just me, Wren has been talking to Darren about this extension, he said, over the last few weeks, and he goes on Talkline and he feels like they're in a good spot. And then, very soon after that, Indiana officially offers, and Darren immediately, as soon as they offer, he, gets on the plane and goes there and doesn't talk direct.
And then he
a chance to counter. Yeah, that is my read of the timeline. Again, I don't think it goes back more than a couple weeks. Really,
I'm not saying it goes to Bahamas either, but the quotes are they're in the press release 10 minutes after Thamel, Cody. That's all I'm saying. His quotes are there, not just the announcement. His quotes are there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think as soon as Indiana offered, it was, yes, absolutely, I'm gone. I don't. But
that means that means he was locked in well before Thamel was comfortable breaking the news. I mean that means that he's.
Well, I think. Well, he called it his dream job. So I think even if, I believe.
Yeah, and obviously their offer is good. Yeah.
Even if it's real good. Yeah. Even if there's not any sort of agreement with Indiana, I think Darren can know in his head, as soon as he starts thinking it's possible, I think he can decide in his head, hey, whatever they offer me, I'm going to take it because I want this job. And he obviously wants the job, right? He obviously wants to be there. He wanted to be there. He wanted the job. And so I think he can't pre-decide, hey, if they offer, I'm taking it. I don't care. I don't care what it is.
But then if you're calling it dirty that he wouldn't let WVU counter, and it does seem like Wren's a little bit upset about that part of it. But if it's your dream job and all the money is right and they're going to invest in you, then why let WVU counter? Just be like, WVU, I love you, but I'm done. And this is my dream job. So right. But I mean, maybe we don't have. Maybe that's not a criticism of him. Maybe he just took his dream job.
Well, that's what I said. If we're going to talk about professionalism or doing Wren dirty, I think that's the one thing that you can't find objectionable to say, hey, good business. Wren's been good to you. I think it is fair to say, Wren, this is the offer I got from Indiana. Can you pay me $30 million over 6 years?
Right.
He can't. So
he would have
right, but that's my read on it. Like I said, I do not have intimate knowledge of the inner workings of Darren DeVries' mind. This is my read on it as somebody who doesn't buy into the drama in all that stuff.
Well, I was asking for your read. No, this isn't.
I know. I'm not coming at you, Mike.
Well, I'm just saying. I hear you. Again, I mean, obviously, the internet was wrong. The internet can come at me if they want. The internet had him locked in with Iowa, for months. The internet had reporting. People were trying to report that he was signed with Iowa as recent as a week ago. People were saying he was in Iowa 24 hours ago. And at that point, Wren Baker pretty much confirmed he already was agreeing with Indiana. At the time, people are saying he's in Iowa. So the internet has been very, very wrong. But I will also say, Cody, as somebody who maybe, again, is more of a conspiracy theorist than you, and maybe I've watched enough, true crime or even the 30 for 30 movies, that if somebody would prove to me at some point that there was a meeting in the Bahamas and they told Darren, hey, we're going to fire this guy. He's not getting it done. We do like you. I'm not saying they offered him anything, but we do like you. We'd like to talk with you in the future. And that maybe planted a seed in Darren's mind. Hey, I probably have a chance at this. I'm getting into Big 12 Coach of the Year candidacy at the time. time, his resume was really looking good at that point. His value was really, really high. I could see them being impressed at that point, what he did with WVU after where WVU was. I mean, it wouldn't be out of this world to believe that could have happened. Separately, though, if it's your dream job and they're making that kind of investment, even if they tipped you off from the Bahamas or they did it in February or it was a week ago or whenever, I don't fault DeVries for taking his dream job with that kind of investment. That is a basketball first school. No matter how much you think the WVU brand can be a good one, it is a football first school. Even basketball history maybe is better. And Wren knows that better than anybody. But I do think you can take your dream job and handle it better than Darren DeVries did. I think if you're Darren DeVries, you tell Indiana, look, maybe we committed months ago. Who knows? Whatever. I'm not saying, again, Tucker wouldn't play if he was healthy. But what I am saying, if I'm Darren DeVries, I would tell Indiana, okay, we're ready to go. I don't even need to talk to them anymore. It's 1 year. Sucks for them. I want to come. You're my dream job. I could win a national championship based on this investment. But what I'm going to need from you, because I'm not a dick, and I do like Wren Baker in the program, is here are my, you got me. But I don't want to see a press release with my quotes 10 minutes after Thamel and 24 hours after Wren goes on his talk show. I have enough respect for him not to do that to him. Wait another day and then put my quotes in. You can throw your graphic up, but I don't need to have my quotes in the press release. Maybe I'd be willing to do my press conference on Thursday instead of Wednesday, because I'm going to let Wren Baker have his 24 hours of his conversation, not me go right before him and make it look like I was on a plane before. He did dick things. They didn't need to be done that way. It just did not. He could have still ended up with Indiana with the same investment. Just give it a little, just change the timeline a little bit so it doesn't allow me to do this speculation. He let this be the conversation by the way he handled it.
Yeah. None of that bothers me, if I'm being honest. Like and I think
It just didn't need to happen that way, I don't think. I don't think, as Wren even said, the investment they were going to make, they weren't going to say no if you need to wait a day because you don't want to be a dick. I just don't think they would.
I think Wren has big boy feelings that that aren't going to get hurt by something like that. And also if we're accepting that Indiana is this blue blood, which obviously they are at this point, even if the last 20 years doesn't suggest that.
Can argue
but
that
if we're accepting that Indiana is this blue blood, they kind of can do stuff like if they are a tier above West Virginia, they're gonna.
I'm just saying DeVries doesn't have to do it. They can do whatever they want.
And I don't
have to do it. So
I don't disagree with you there. I certainly think Darren has handled this in a way where he doesn't care what the West Virginia thinks about him.
Sure, and so then why release the statement he released 2 days ago where he kind of was like, I feel bad for the fans. I'm sorry we didn't get in the tournament and all that BS. Like maybe I would even not even care at all, and I would love in the transfer portal era. I've even said this about players. If you're going to do a place dirty, fine. It's all business, player and coaches. But then don't release a statement saying, I loved it there, respect to them, but I got to move on. Just say, I'm moving on. Deuces. I don't care if I screw you, and I'm never stepping foot there again. I'd rather have that statement than to get what we've been getting. That's all I'm saying. But but whatever.
I want to go to the chat real quick. Somebody was asking about Tucker's red shirt.
I was going to actually go there too. Yes. You want to?
My understanding of how this process works is because Tucker played here this season, West Virginia has to apply for his medical red shirt, which will be granted. And then once it's granted, West Virginia has to release him from that so that he can officially transfer to Indiana.
Which is happening because he was at the press conference. Like they're going to do it clearly. They're not going to block
it. In my opinion, and there are people that say, that will say they should be petty and West Virginia shouldn't let it happen and this and that.
Right.
In my opinion, the best course of action for this is just to do it quietly, as streamlined, just get it done, get him out, let him go to Indiana, because you don't need a news cycle. You don't need another news cycle. Just hire your coach, get Tucker out. Darren's already gone. Sell their house, right? Just get him out and move on. Right? This doesn't need to be ugly. I think for both sides, it's exponentially worse the uglier it does get. So that's, again, my understanding of the process. West Virginia gets his medical red shirt, releases him from it. He can go to Indiana and be happy. And West Virginia can be happy.
Yeah, no, that's my understanding of it as well. But would you not say it's fair to say that while Darren DeVries, we can maybe, most fans would say, I'm going to say, whether you agree or not, acted dirty in a way. But regardless of that, and maybe Wren, I do think Wren's a little bit realizes, the Wolves blew over him a little bit. Obviously, he's a big boy. He's not going to cry about it anymore. He's moving on. But I do think he doesn't love the way it was handled. But once you get to that point, and Darren's gone, and now that we've seen Tucker at the press conference wearing the hoodie in the pictures, which they're putting out publicly, honestly, it hasn't even been officially, put out there that he's entering the portal, but clearly he's the medical red shirt's going to happen, and then he's going to leave and go there, and it'll be one more year of college basketball where if you played the full season at WVU, that wouldn't be the case. I would imagine that based on how this is all unfolded and what we've already seen in Indiana, that Wren Baker's probably done already or agreed to do already what you're saying, where he talked to Darren once he couldn't even get a conversation on keeping him, and Darren said, I'm going. Obviously everyone knows he'd want to take his son, and Wren probably said, whatever, we'll talk about, whether I like it or not later, but, I'm going to make this easy for you. Let's not have a news cycle. He's going to be released. We'll apply all this stuff. I don't think DeVries would put Tucker in a press conference and Indiana would post him if he was going to be stuck at another program, because then you're getting into legality where a court and a judge can say, you just announced, you announced him with you, but he wasn't with you because he was with them. I'd imagine there's a handshake deal, if not an official agreement between Wren, WVU, and Indiana that Tucker's going to go. WVU's not going to fight it. I would think, or they wouldn't have put him out there in the press conference. That'd be stupid if they did.
And it's probably just, it's probably even more simple than I'm making it. It's probably very, very simple, just paperwork to fill out, and it's bing, bang.
No, it's not months of a thing. The only way it is if the NCAA tries to deny that's the only way is if they try to argue the eligibility.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
But anyway, that's somebody asked. So that's my understanding of how that process works.
Yeah, Shannon asked that again. Cody Nespor, Mike Asti here, WV Sports Now, Mountaineer Report, as we're reacting to Wren Baker's press conference as he now goes dark and gets in the midst of another coaching search. And I will say, Cody, that is the respectable way to do it. That is the way Wren Baker was going to do it. And as I talked about on the last show, because we even danced around this topic a little bit because I knew it was going to get brought up and maybe even asked of Wren. And I tried to ask it, I think, the best way I possibly could. And I think maybe Wren didn't love the question, but I think he answered it in a respectful way. He probably thought that was coming as well. But what I'm going to give the fans right now is the counter argument. I do agree with what you're saying, and Wren is doing that. And obviously, if you go in the dirty direction, even if you think Darren DeVries acted dirty, Indiana acted dirty, if you get down in the mud with them, then it will hurt you in recruiting. It may make it harder on the next coach. Other players are going to see this and be like, do I really want to go there? Because if I have to transfer in a year, they're going to make it a gigantic pain in the ass. Like they're not maybe treating their players right. This is a future potential NBA player. Do you want that stain on you? He can go in NBA locker rooms and say, you don't want to go to WVU because they're going to act dirty. Like that could really be a problem with telephone and word of mouth. And I don't think Wren wants to deal with that. It's just a headache they don't need. They're going to get on First Take again. Stephen A. Smith will be talking about them and saying they're, immature. I don't think he wants any of that noise. He wants to get a sound coach, to get stability there, and then move on finally for the first time in years. However, the only counter is, which is probably what the fans are screaming, not even this search, not even what Indiana did, because you can always lose a coach to a blue blood. They got screwed over by the NCAA. The NCAA made it clear that even though your resume is better, they want another blue blood in. The NCAA made it very clear that they're not going to really respect WVU unless Bob Huggins is the coach, because at the time they would put Huggins in the tournament with that similar resume. I do feel like, there is a theory that if Huggins was still the coach and he was a Hall of Famer prior to the scandals, they may have bumped him in. He always got bumps in when he had a resume at that or worse, and he did a couple years ago with a worse resume. They gave Huggins the benefit of the doubt. They don't give it to West Virginia anymore. And maybe they wouldn't give it to Pitt or any other similar program, and they would have put North Carolina in instead of them too. I do believe that. It's not just WVU that the NCAA clearly isn't fair to. But the NCAA is not going to be fair to West Virginia, regardless of their money, regardless of the history, regardless of whoever is the coach. So because of all of that, this would be a little bit of not the craziness of the attorney general getting involved, but this is just a subtle legal thing you can do to try to make it clear. I'm not going to be, let anybody mess with me. I'm not going to be bullied by the NCAA, and I'm going to send a message here that you can't just bully me, Wren Baker, around. Yeah, you can go ahead and pick North Carolina if you want because they're the blue blood, but we got to stand up for something. This has happened in recent memory again with Pitt and North Carolina. Again, bringing up North Carolina, that Pitt, a similar program that obviously always gets compared to WVU in a way, they did try to fight and be like, we're not just going to, get bullied by you. He'll eventually go. We know that, but we're going to make you spend a little bit more money, get talked about a little bit more, and then we're going to make it a little dirty. And Cody, by the way, I will just say there have been a couple members of Indiana media that have messaged me to just ask. This was within the last 24 hours, so before the press conference, but not, obviously it didn't get, I didn't break the news, but they just were asking, do you think West Virginia would try to do that in fight with Tucker? And I didn't think so. I thought they would do what they're doing. But if they're asking, that means there's a thought there because they know they were acting dirty and they know this happened within the last decade. And it is a legal recourse they could do to fight a big boy that has been screwing them. And it probably would piss the NCAA off.
Yeah.
That would be the counter argument. And that's probably what the fans want to happen. But no, they're not going to do that. That's not great business if you do it.
I think my semi-serious response to that would be when Pitt did that, it was under Kevin Stallings, and I think you want to distance yourself from anything Kevin Stallings ever did as much as you possibly can.
That was one of the worst tenures anywhere. Yes, very, very bad.
That is the worst high major tenure for a basketball coach I have seen in my lifetime. I think
100%. Yeah,
and anything that Kevin Stallings did,
they didn't win a damn conference game. Yeah,
you should have a list of and say, I'm not doing any of that stuff.
Yeah, so, I mean, but that's just what. Yeah,
semi-serious response.
Yeah, that's just where I think the fans' heads are gonna go here.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah,
but as we round things out here, and we'll do a couple more of these. We're not going to hear from Wren again, so it will require some journalism, obviously, which we're going to get to do and get a reporting hat on.
Mike, you and I are trained professional journalists.
It's wild. So you actually, I'm assuming people in the chat and they actually want, if they're clicking on this, they actually want some commentary from journalists rather than to just go on the internet and just believe whatever's out there. Because, that's been proven wrong time and time again. And I, absolutely think that both of our track record has been better than what the internet randomly says on a Facebook
I would hope so.
account. I would not only would you hope so, it's been proven time and time again. I mean, again, it's been proven time and time again. But, is there anything else from what Wren said or just your thoughts in general? I do think it's going to be quick. I do think he has a final group already. I do think he's talked to these guys. I do think a lot of the names that people are thinking of that are bringing up are legit candidates here. I don't think he's going to cry if he happens to lose a guy. I think they're all very similar as well. But do you have any hot take of even anyone that you think anyone should watch? I do have one, by the way, but I don't think he'll really get the job. But I do have one I can bring up that is technically in a little bit of my wheelhouse as well.
No, I think, the guys I've mentioned today and yesterday, McCollum, Calhoun, Nico Medved, I think any one of those guys would be a really, really strong hire and people would be really excited about. And if we're signing off, my last hot take today is just the passion people feel right now. Let's channel that into the women's team, right? I cannot be.
Cody will be there. He's covering it for us. Yeah,
I will be there. I'll apparently, talking to some people today. Apparently, I'm going to be the only media, one of the only media down there. People are obviously.
Yeah, your former colleague is another one of them, and and I know the program's going to be there, but not the top of the food chain from what we heard from the program as well. So but I get it.
So
They got busy things and things to deal with, but we'll be there.
So my
Cody will be
last
there for us.
little hurrah is
Yeah.
this passion you're feeling right now. Everybody's feeling, whether it's anger at DeVries or excitement or whatever. Funnel that into the women for this weekend at least. Let's see where this run goes. I promise you, I think it's going to be really exciting. This is a really good team that's really fun to watch. And I'm not saying it because I'm going to be down there covering it. I want you to read my stuff. I'm saying it because it is. They are fun. It's an easy team to root for. I really enjoyed covering Mark Kellogg. You've done it a few times. Like I think talking to Kellogg's a delight by and large. I really like watching that team, and they're in a really good spot in Chapel Hill to maybe go on a run. And I think people would really, if people got excited and got behind this, I think it would pay off.
Yeah, and I can fully attest. I've done it a bunch in my career at different levels, broadcast, writing, etc., college to professional. Covering an NCAA tournament, whether it's men's or women's, is a really, really cool thing. It really, really is a cool thing. So a team that actually is good with a major program, with a star, historically great player, for that to be your first run at it. I'll also say this to everybody out there, that if somehow there's a major upset and they lose right away, blame Cody. The curse of Cody then. The curse of Cody then will befall Mark Kellogg in the program, because everywhere Cody touches is I'm just kidding. But yeah, we're going to send Cody there. So his coverage will be here at WV Sports now. And they absolutely do deserve the respect and that coverage. And the I don't want to say it's a hot take at all, but the name I want to throw out there that has not been brought up, and I said it's in my wheelhouse because it could be, it's within our network of coverage. I have worked there. I do know him. I've talked to him many times. I actually started my media career originally working there on their broadcast. I was on the broadcast when this school was in the NCAA tournament a decade ago. Have a ring for actually winning a conference title there, and that is Robert Morris in the West of Pittsburgh in Moon Township. And Andy Toole, he is still young. He was in conversations a decade ago. Literally, when I was there, the conversation was, how long are you going to be here? Because your value is really, really good. He went on a decade-long journey where it kind of dipped, and he chose to stay then and bucked other offers. I know he had offers at that point. He's now back in the NCAA tournament. He's once again, because West Virginia got snubbed, the entire region within 300 miles, it is just him. Pitt didn't get in. Duquesne didn't get in like they did last year. You want to extend to Penn State. They didn't get in. They blew it, obviously. So
Ohio State didn't get in.
You could even go there. So, he has the coverage. He got a lot more coverage than normal in terms of the major TV stations. They're following him. They're close in Cleveland. And that's already been slowly, I know, brought up. I already got some texts from people who are there. And I will even give credit Will Graves, the WVU alum who writes for the AP. He is there covering it because, again, he's the Pittsburgh AP guy. He's the guy in the region. It's the team. Why not drive to Cleveland to do it? And he even brought that up to me. And again, I don't think he'll really get the job. I don't think Wren would do it. I could see Wren liking him, though, because he's been a head coach. Yes, it's a mid-major level. Wren is clearly willing to elevate a guy as long as they've been a head coach. And he might think if you can win there, you can win with the resources we're going to have, because you don't have them there. I don't even know if Andy Toole would leave. He really, really likes Robert Morris. He'd become a legend there if he keeps on staying. And I also will hear anybody who gives me pause, Cody, because the negativity there is also what I partly brought up. He was in 10 years ago. It was a decade journey, and now he's back. I think we both know that if they get 2 NCAA tournament appearances in a decade at West Virginia, the fans are going to go to his house and tell him how they don't like the hire. So he can't be doing that. You got to be more consistent. Prior to the Huggins scandal, they were in every year. They got 31 of them. That's more than Pitt and all these other teams in the region. And, Robert Morris and their handful is not going to get it done for these fans at WVU. And I think Wren knows that as well. But he's within the region. He's still freaking young. And now his value is peaked again. Yeah. I would think that maybe, yes, you did kill WVU killed Robert Morris this year. Obviously, if they played each other, WVU should win every time and was a better team even this year. But they got in because they won a conference title, by the way, if anyone's wondering. But I just would wonder if, at least I would think that he's at least earned the situation where Wren would call him and his agent and, say, You weren't interested in any major job a decade ago when your value was high. Your value is high again. You're young. We're in the region. You know us. We just played. Our job is open. Are you interested? Do you want to talk? Not even saying you'd be my top candidate, but where is your head? And we get once and for all, if Andy Toole says no, we would know he's there for 30 years and for life. This is probably his last opportunity to really, really hit the ground running and get in the power group. And if you're him, going just an hour south probably would be the best scenario for you and your family. He could arguably not move and still do this. And honestly, I'm sure he would move, but like you could. Everyone knows I live in Pittsburgh and I drive 50 minutes and cover the program. So it's not like it's unheard of. He could do it if his kids want to stay in school, wherever they go, near Moon Township, and he wants to go to WVU, they could get that done. Where probably no other program would let him do that, and Pitt is clearly not firing capable. So
I like that a lot, Mike.
I think his name needs brought up. I think it needs brought up. And it's not really by anybody. So I guess, the Pittsburgh guy got to bring it up if somebody's going to. I don't think, again, he would get hired, but I would be interested in what they would discuss. And I think if he tells Wren he's interested, I could see Wren being impressed by him, to be honest. Yeah. He's a great interview. He's very, very smart. And maybe Wren would even respect a guy because he doesn't want to lose a coach. He likes loyalty. Maybe he would respect, okay, you turned down jobs before, you built it up again. I think if Andy Toole came to WVU, he would be there. He would want to be there for a decade. He doesn't like moving his family, clearly. That's what he cited 10 years ago. I don't think he would job hunt. I don't think you would see him a year from now at Indiana or Kentucky. I don't even think those blue bloods would like him. They would probably think he's beneath them. But I think he would at minimum be there for years on end. I would have a concern, Cody, that he would not be popular enough or be a big enough name, even knowing they might still get a mid-major, for recruits. And I would be a concern that it would be a Neil Brown-esque climb. And I think the fans, after what they've just dealt with in the basketball program, I think Wren would probably have to think in his heart, can I bring a guy in that does not have the DeVries ability to win right away at a Big 12 school? Do you think Toole can do what DeVries just did? If you think it takes him 2 or 3 years instead of one, do you wait and just give the money that you now have to a McCollum type of coach? That would be the concern. But I think Andy Toole needs a conversation, and I do think his name could be brought up for sure, and it's really not been. So I just want to throw that out there here. So you can back me up, Cody, if we don't yet write it, that if he ends up getting out there, I have brought it up first. On the show, and the fans can corroborate. But
like I said, I think that's a really good. I think that's a really good guy to bring up, Mike. He wasn't on my radar, front of my mind. Local guy, obviously he'd be the best, quote unquote local kind of candidate. He's, like you said, showcased that legacy that fans are dying for. I think that's and you're right. Maybe he doesn't have the name to bring in big recruits, but he would have the cash. He would have the cash to go get big recruits if he could. So, I don't think that wouldn't be a terrible hire. It wouldn't. I think people would get behind that.
I think eventually they would need the guy to win. I mean, he had some really lean years in these last decade, and I mean, that would be the concern, that he would need some lean years to get going. And I need to stress that can't be the case with this fan base and what they've had to deal with. You can't do that. So it depends, but maybe maybe the lean years wouldn't happen at WVU. Maybe Wren would believe he's a great coach, but they didn't have the resources at Robert Morris. He would be giving him. If he took the WVU job, Cody, he'd probably be sitting there, sitting pretty, saying, "Man, I'm reading all the stuff about WVU and all the negativity. This is heaven in comparison to what I was doing before." He's having to, be a used car salesman to get somebody to go. Yeah, right. He's trying to get interest. The only time fans really care about RMU is when they're in the tournament as the only team, which happens once every 10 years, basically. And he had to fight for you should see where they were playing in the arena they had when he made the tournament the last time. He had to fight to get what they have now. Their media deals, you could argue they're even lesser than Duquesne in the Pittsburgh region. They're not getting the respect of anything. They have a tough time with everything. You got to be a used car salesman to players there, and you're not getting the top guys. You got to really, you're not giving them big money. They got to want to play basketball. He would be in heaven at WVU, but again, I don't think it'll happen. But he's a name, Andy Toole, that should be thrown out there. So that'll do it for this edition of the show. And Cody, you got a fan there, Shannon Miller. She likes your pick. So there you go.
It was bound to happen eventually.
There you go. Cody has a fan, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe Shannon, follow Cody everywhere you can find him on social media there at Cody Nespor. Follow him. I don't know the age of Shannon. We can maybe do, try to play matchmaker here as well. Nonetheless, that'll do it for this edition of the show. Cody Nespor, Mike Asti here, of course. Find all of our coverage at WV Sports Now. We're going to have a lot more of it. And yes, Cody will be in North Carolina, ironically, the location. He will be covering the women's basketball program as they try to avenge something for the Mountaineers, and they are a damn good team that should be able to continue that on. And, there's pressure to at least get to a Sweet 16, but they should be able to do it. So Cody's going to have a lot of coverage there for us, and, not many places to find it, as Cody alluded to. Not many places to find it. So, and I think for the amount of coverage that we're going to do digital-wise, we might be the only one there. I mean, maybe there's one other, but they're more of like a video thing. You can kind of guess what I'm talking about. The other one, is more of a legacy newspaper. I think for what we're going to do, we're going to be pretty unique. So again, follow him and find us there at WVSN. But that'll do it. Okay, Shannon, but nonetheless, I'm sure Cody still appreciates you. As a new fan, we didn't need the actual number there, Shannon. I appreciate everyone joining here on the live chat, and we'll check in again as soon as we get more information on this search, of course.